Welcome to the Arbutus Analyzer tutorial series. This tutorial will discuss the enhanced procedure capabilities of Arbutus Analyzer. When writing scripts or procedures, you can get very elaborate in terms of what you do. One of the things that is very common is to have procedures called other procedures. These other procedures are typically just helper procedures and are not intended to be run on their own. This can present problems for inexperienced users if the procedures are being written by someone who's more of an expert. Take, for example, the Levenstein A through E. Levenstein A is intended to be run first, and it calls other procedures. You can see on line 39, it calls Levenstein B, and then it calls Levenstein C, etc. That requires that Levenstein A be run first. If you try to run Levenstein B, C, D, or E on their own, you could get an error. In fact, you will get an error. It also clutters up the overview. It took 5 individual files to accomplish this task. What we've done is we've allowed end users to roll all of those sub-procedures into the calling procedure itself. If I click on the little Levenstein procedure here, again, we'll go to line 39, and you can see that the script is fairly similar. The command syntax is very similar to the previous, except there's a little dot prior to the Levenstein B being called. What this is a call to the application that says, look inside of this procedure, somewhere deeper down inside the procedure, for Levenstein B. If I were just to right-click and select Find, I can go down inside of the procedure a bit deeper, and we can see on line 65 there's actually a procedure, Levenstein B. What this is a callable sub-procedure, also known as a procedure label. So you can take any number of individual procedures that are being called, and you can roll them all into the calling procedure as opposed to having them as self-contained separate files. This allows for tidier code, and it also allows for tidier overview. One of the other things that users have asked about is the ability so that if I were to write a procedure and I were to hand it to 5 or 6 different people, when they run the procedure, we want to make sure they all get the same result. In the Tools Options area, there are several different areas, starting with the Date area, for instance, where the settings could determine and could affect what the procedure gives as a result. One of the things that we've done is we've added a command called setDefault. Typically, this should be the first command in every procedure that is set, that is run. Excuse me. The reason for this is setDefault is establishing the same working environment for all of your users. It's like pushing the default button in the Tools Options area. This ensures everybody begins at the same starting point. And then, as you can see here, you can add in your various different set commands, whether you want to set echo off or set echo none, set safety off, set your dates, whatever it is. You can set it up so that each individual user will absolutely have exactly the same configuration settings when they run this procedure, and it guarantees they're going to always get the same result. Something else to note, even if you put in all of these different set commands, such as set date, these settings, when put inside of a procedure, will not affect your global settings, your tools option settings, because what we've also done is if Analyzer calls a procedure, we will take a snapshot of your settings prior to running that procedure. At the end of the procedure, we will reinstate all of your settings just like they were prior to running the procedure. So it doesn't matter what you put inside your procedure in terms of these set commands. It's not going to negatively impact your interactive work after the procedure is done. and you don't have to worry about going back and trying to do all these resettings manually. Lastly, something else that's been done based on user feedback is the ability to have a bit of a cleaner dialog for file opens. If I were to do a new procedure, and if I were to build a dialog, one of the things we could do is we could say, choose your data file. And we have the ability now, using an edit box, where you can actually just, right inside the dialog, we have the capability to create a little file name browser. So it's a little file open dialog browser. And if I were to select this one, just make this a little bit bigger. By default now, if I wanted to just save and run this, you can see it asks us to choose the data file, and then it gives us a little ... button, and when you push the ... button, it just opens up a standard file open dialog. This makes it a lot easier, a lot simpler, a lot cleaner for trying to get end users to choose their data file. A few other things I'll just touch on quickly that make working with procedures a little bit easier is the ability, as I mentioned before, let's say that you did have these 5 tables or these 5 files, and A called, B called, C called, D, etc. What you could actually do is you could actually hide these helper type files so that end users couldn't just run the B, C, D, or E file, as I mentioned before, and then cause problems. What you can do is you can simply rename any of these objects to end with an underscore. And when I do that, you'll see that all of these little helper procedures will disappear. Now, of course, I'll have to change my Levenstein A procedure to actually reference the name with an underscore at the end. But this is an approach for those folks if you didn't want to roll it all into one procedure using our callable sub-procedures capabilities. You could simply implement this as a quick fix to hide your little helper files and make sure that end users did not run them out of order. And now when I run that little Levenstein A procedure, it will go ahead here, and I'll just choose my employee master and my vendor master. And it's asking what fields map to the address, to the city, to the state. For this particular table, zip code, and then the same thing for my secondary table, what fields in the file map to these various different items that we're searching for Levenstein difference on. And when I run the procedure, there we go. It found 4 records where the employee master and the vendor master had addresses which were similar. They were within, in this case, they were within 1 character of each other. In this record, they were within 2 characters of each other, and in these last 2 examples, they were 100% identical. So those are just a couple of the enhanced procedural capabilities of Analyzer. If you want to see additional procedure capabilities, please check the Analyzer help or contact your local support person.